What's happening, everybody? It is Monday, February 3rd. There was a whole lot that happened this weekend. The Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, DeMichael Cole, will join the show. We'll talk some Grizz wins and a massive trade in the NBA. And the Grizz keep rolling on the road. Tigers roll on the road as well. Ole Miss comes up short against the number one team in the land. We'll talk about it all on the 24th floor, which starts right now. All right, happy Monday to all of you. Hope your weekend was fantastic. We hope it was restful, and I hope you're getting after it on this marvelous Monday. Those of you who have been tapping into the show will certainly notice that the desk looks a little decidedly less full today. If you missed last Thursday's show, last week was the final week for my dear friends Rachel and Caleb as they move on to some other very, very cool opportunities. I will miss them dearly, but as we like to say here in Memphis, when the show's got to keep rolling, we move. And we're going to start by getting you up to date and up to the minute. Let's rock. Last night, the Memphis Grizzlies beat the Milwaukee Bucks on the road 132-119. Jaren Jackson Jr. led the way with a whopping 37 points, and they have now beat the Bucks 7 times in a row. Santi Aldama adds 23 points, and Desmond Bane dropped 22 in the win. And speaking of Jaren Jackson Jr., named to the 2025 NBA All-Star team as a reserve. That news coming down Thursday afternoon. It's the second time Jackson's been named as an All-Star, scoring a career and team best 22 points per game, tack on 6 rebounds, a steal, and a block per game. NBA All-Star Weekend, February the 14th through the 16th in the Yay area, better known as San Francisco. And the Memphis Tigers' winning streak stretches to 5 games with an 86-83 win over Rice on Sunday. The Tigers led by P.J. Haggerty's 26 points and 8 rebounds. And then the other P.J. Carter, drops 19, as does Tyrese Hunter. Memphis now 8-1 in conference play, number 1 in the American Athletic Conference. All right, now just because I'm rolling solo doesn't mean you're only going to hear my voice on this show. I'm going to be bringing in a ton of guests to the program, the first of which is my friend and a very respected journalist here in the 901, DeMichael Cole, Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal and host of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast, which you can find pretty much everywhere and especially on YouTube. DeMichael, my guy, what's happening with you, my man?
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm good, man. You know, it's a Monday. I feel fresh. I got my coffee in me, and now it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it feels like I've been up all day already. But we move. How about you, my friend? How was your weekend?
Man, great weekend. Got a lot of things done. Of course, the Grizzlies, big win for them, going on the road, putting it on Milwaukee after being down double digits in the second half. Great performance from Jaren Jackson Jr., a bunch of other guys stepping up. And it was a couple days in between the games. So for somebody like me, that's important, right? You know, Friday, Saturday, got a little time to myself before the game on Sunday. So, yeah, smooth weekend.
Yeah, a huge week coming up. Next couple of weeks, really. We got the NBA trade deadline coming this week, and then we have, of course, NBA All-Star Weekend, which you will be at, I'm sure, and I will be there as well. So we'll be able to hang out there and have a whole lot of fun Grizzlies-wise. But you talk about that big win for the Bucks, for the Grizzlies over the Bucks. That's going to be our big idea for the afternoon. Let's jump into it. Grizzlies taking on Milwaukee. Let's start in the second quarter. G.G. Jackson meeting my guy Giannis at the Summit. Get that out of here with the weak mess. Grizz were down 2 at the half. Give me the third quarter. Jaren Jackson Jr. to the big fella, Zach Edey, who had 14 and 10. My favorite version of Desmond Bane, though, is the downhill variety. Going to take this from half court, coast to coast, slam it on the Bucks' head. Dez had 22 points on the night, and then he's going to help get the rookie involved. Jalen Wells getting in on the dunk party himself. Grizz put up 37 in the third quarter, but allowed 41 points by the Bucks. So still down in the fourth quarter. Enter Jaren Jackson Jr., who puts up a pair of threes. A 10-0 spurt from the Grizzlies gave them a 108-103 lead. They'd go on to win it 132-119 on the back of Jackson Jr.'s 37 points. Memphis in sole possession now of second place in the West. So my guy, DeMichael Cole, I'm sure you watched this game as you were actually on your couch hanging out this time. Usually you're in the building, but you got a chance to watch this. What'd you think about what the Grizzlies were able to do getting their 7th straight win over the Bucks?
Yeah, when Ja Morant's out of the lineup, Jaren Jackson Jr., I mean, you can argue he's already option 1A or when it comes to what he's doing on the offensive end. But even beyond that, I think what you see is this ability of the Grizzlies to kind of, different guys can step up into different roles. For example, you look at the last 4 games that Ja Morant has missed. The first 2 of that 4-game stretch, Desmond Bane had 14 assists in each of those games. I think in this most recent game, Desmond Bane only had 3 or 4 assists, but it was Luke Kennard who had 8 assists. And Luke Kennard has also had, a double-digit assist game this year. He's had several games with at least 5 assists. There was Scottie Pippen Jr. who had 10 assists, who's done that, a few times as well this season. So the playmaking duties don't solely fall on Desmond Bane when Ja Morant is out of the game. It's pretty much a collaborative effort. And so many guys, kind of chip in. And then, of course, you get the scoring from Jaren. Santi off the bench is bringing that pop, as Taylor Jenkins like to say. Really a big-time win for the Grizzlies on the road in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think this was one where you really enjoyed kind of seeing everybody put the contribution in the box score, especially when you get 20 points from Asante Aldama. He's been a little streaky here as of late, but when Santi puts up anywhere between that 15 to 20 to 25 point range, good things tend to happen for this Grizzlies team. I loved, for me, the hustle in this game was incredible. I think in that first half, it seemed like the Bucks were getting just about every 50-50 ball, and then you get into the second half, and it seemed like it flipped on its head, where the Grizzlies were getting to every 50-50 ball. You're seeing Scotty on the floor a lot. You're seeing Jalen Wells on the floor a lot. It seemed like they really wanted this one from a hustle perspective, maybe a little bit differently than what we've seen from them in the past. Would you agree with that?
They stuck with it, man. They stuck with it, and they were hungry because you're coming off that win against Houston. Then you get a couple days in between, right? So you're talking about some fresher legs in a way, and we all, it's kind of the elephant in the room in terms of the rotation part of how this team is going to be managed going forward. They're not going to be able to play 10, 11, 12 guys. And then you got a couple guys who are going to be back eventually. You got, Ja Morant, will be back into the fold. Vince Williams will be back, and several others, as well, Marcus Smart. So when you factor all that in, they're going to have to kind of condense this rotation a little bit. So you got a bunch of guys who are hungry to take advantage of their minutes. Scottie Pippen Jr.'s role is not guaranteed going forward. So you know what? I'm going to go out there. I'm going to hound. We're going to be a pest. I'm going to get some steals. I'm going to make Damian Lillard have a tough night at the office, and I'm going to get 10 assists while doing that. So, you had a bunch of guys who really playing with that extra fire. So, yeah, I do think that is a fair way to put it. You get a couple days off, and, the players are aware of some of the things that have been said, specifically about them not being, able to beat some of the best teams in the NBA or whatever that notion is. And what you've seen over the last couple games, they get the big-time win against Houston, and then now in this game against Milwaukee, you're trailing in the third quarter, double digits. You mentioned the fourth quarter run, Jaren Jackson Jr. shining. They're chomping at the bit to kind of, prove those people wrong who believe they're not going to beat some of the elite teams of the league.
Yeah, I think they were 12-11 after they lost to the New York Knicks. That was an embarrassing one. Yeah. You come back, you get a very motivated team against the Houston Rockets, where they don't want to get swept, right, over the course of the season series. The Rockets had them 3-0 up until that win on Thursday. And then you get a win against the Milwaukee Bucks. All three of those teams are going to be playoff teams that are going to be in the mix. And I think this one in particular was really impressive just because it seemed like for most of the game, the Bucks had a lead, they stretched it back out to 10, and the Grizzlies would close it back to 5 or 6. The Bucks would stretch it back out to 10 again. I mean, they hit 23s in this game, and normally if a team gets up around there, you're thinking, maybe it's just not your night. And I think what was really admirable was like when you entered that fourth quarter, the Grizzlies actually closed it, got it down to one possession before I think it was A.J. Green hit a three to extend it back to, I want to say, somewhere between like 5 and 6 points to go into the fourth quarter. Yeah. But then they come into the fourth quarter like absolute gangbusters. And then what impressed me with Jaren was he's always been aggressive, but what we've seen over the last couple of years is his ability to just kind of take over games in spurts and in stretches in much the same way that we see Ja take over games in the same way. I think they're kind of getting into that scenario where you can lean on either one of them in that point. For the Grizzlies in this one, 66 points in the paint. They continue to just be dominant. I think that's kind of an area where we've really seen the Bucks play really, really well. It was strange to me that I think they had Zach Edey in the game. The Grizzlies did for a while, and then the Bucks kind of made the adjustment where in the second half where they put Brook Lopez more out on that perimeter, hit a couple of threes, and Taylor Jenkins was like, "Yeah, we gotta take Zach out of this one." But he played really well in this game. I think he had 14 and 10. Solid game for the rookie. But what do you think about what they've been able to do with Zach when they do have those bigs that do tend to stretch the floor a little bit more?
Yeah, so it's an evolving process with him, because at the end of the day, one thing that's really stood out when we covering Zach Edey is he's a really good learner, and you think that's pretty much a common thing throughout the NBA, but guys learn at different speeds, and he catches on to things fast. I think of a couple times earlier this season where he would struggle with something, and then I'd ask him about it, and he'd say, "I've seen it now, so I know what to do." And then it comes, a similar situation happens later on, and you see the adjustments. So the mental part of that, he's starting to grasp things better. Physically, that's always an adjustment for a rookie. It's a difference from being the strongest guy in college basketball, probably for your last 2 seasons, and arguably your last 3. Like it just wasn't a question. Now in the NBA, you're seeing even like Steven Adams is like moving Zach Edey out of the way sometimes, and some of the other bigger bigs, like you're not going to move them as easy as you were college athletes. So the physicality is still an adjustment for him, but he's battling. I mean, you mentioned this game, the rebounding, and he had 6 offensive rebounds as part of that, which is the most important factor to his game, in my opinion, more than the screening, more than his playmaking, more than his scoring. It's his ability to be able to rebound, because quite frankly, the Grizzlies don't have a lot of elite rebounders, and he's the guy who can do some of that for you. In regards to, Brook Lopez, taking away from the basket some, like that's going to be the, I guess, struggle, you would say, with Zach Edey as of right now. He competes and he's trying, but even if you go back a couple games ago, you mentioned the game against the Knicks being one that the Grizzlies struggled in. In that game, Zach Edey was matched up against Karl Anthony Towns. He started in the first half, and then in the second half, Taylor Jenkins turned to Brandon Clark to start the second half rather than to continue to start with Edey. So you're seeing in certain situations where the Grizzlies will lean on a Brandon Clark and some of their more mobile big defenders who are more comfortable being on that island on the perimeter. That is still something that Zach Edey is getting used to. It wasn't something he had to do much of in college. And right now, NBA teams, they're always going to try to put those bigger guys who are a little bit slower on that island. And it was one of the biggest questions with Edey through the draft process. Right now, and we're starting to see it in the league. And it's just about, honestly, if he competes because he has Jaren Jackson Jr. behind him, I think he'll be okay in those situations.
Yeah, solid game for the rookie. Obviously, he gets a double-double. We've seen him kind of be up and down, but the rebounding battle was a big one in this one. Grizzlies actually out-rebounded Milwaukee, I think, 61-36, and the Grizzlies had 22 offensive rebounds. So that's going to help you win a lot of games, especially when you're kind of playing from behind in a lot of these ones. The Grizzlies will take on the Spurs tonight, but they've already had 2 games straight without Ja Morant. The last 2 games we've seen him, He's been a little subdued, to Michael. Maybe the best way to put it. Had the hoodie on and the shiesty in both games against the Rockets and the Milwaukee Bucks. We know he's kind of been dealing with a shoulder injury, but what do you make of just the shoulder injury now that he's kind of re-aggravated that, and then his kind of demeanor over the last couple of games here not playing?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to some of the guys, on the team and whatnot, and it seems like, around him, when he's around his teammates, he's been fun or whatever the case may be. Like the guys say, oh, we don't think anything's wrong with him. But one thing that some of them have said is there is frustration, right, with the injury. And then when you kind of peel the layers back a little bit further, and you realize Ja hasn't played more than 4 consecutive games at any point this season. And he's been dealing with nagging injury after nagging injury, the AC grade 1 joint sprain, the right shoulder soreness that he's currently dealing with, the ankle stuff, the hip injury that he had earlier this season. Like, it's just been nagging thing after nagging thing. And if you go back to the beginning of the season, when Ja Morant was talking about his goals, he said a happy Ja is a scary job, right? That was the quote. That was the money quote. But there was the other thing that he said he kept referencing availability. He wants to be available this season. So seeing the way that this season has played out is frustrating for him. Like he comes back, feel like, oh, you have a nice couple games or whatever, and then boom, you're out. And now you're trying to get back in the rhythm. The Grizzlies are trying to get back in the rhythm with you, and it's just a constant process of trying to get the best version of this team and yourself. So I'm sure he's just struggling with that.
Yeah, certainly in a mode where it feels like he's in constant ramp up mode, right? He'll miss a game or two, he'll get back in the lineup. He plays well. I mean, whenever we see him on the floor, he's not necessarily putting up the 25, 30 points a game in the way we've seen him do it, but he's still controlling ball games, especially with his passing. I think the way he allows the pace of the game, he dictates a lot of that this season. But I feel like it's got to be a little disheartening. I mean, I think for Grizzlies fans, and even for us in the media, we only see Ja, right, a couple hours, a couple times a week. We don't see what he's like in practice necessarily. We don't see what he's like at home and amongst the front office. But I think for a lot of fans, you're frustrated. He's missing games, right? You want to see Ja play. I think we all agree the best version of this Grizzlies team is when Ja's on the floor. But when he is sitting there and on the bench, shiesty up. I think in the Houston game especially, we didn't really see him move off the bench too many times. He wasn't really involved in the huddles as much. I think that says a lot about where his mind kind of might be right now. I mean, frustration is definitely an easy way to put it. I think that's probably the best word to use. But you just kind of wonder, like, I hope he's good. Right? As a Grizzlies fan, as somebody who covers this team, you hope he's good because they can only go so far, really, as Ja takes them, no matter how good Desmond Bane has been, no matter how good Jaren's been this year, and Jaren's an all-star. But we got to see what we're going to get from Ja. Probably not likely. I haven't seen the injury report for today, but not likely he probably plays tonight against the Spurs. Jorge Sedano actually, from the ESPN broadcast of the Bucks game, said that he was dealing with that shoulder injury. He actually couldn't get his arm above his head or above his shoulder, I guess, as he's kind of continuing to get back. So that doesn't bode well. You're hoping maybe he gets a chance to rest up here a little bit before the NBA All-Star break, but I mean, we're rolling up on, they got, I think, five or six games left before they get into All-Star break, and it's kind of a crucial period before, you get a little time to rest, and I'm sure they want to give him as much rest as they can get him before the second half of the season starts.
Yeah, he's going to be questionable for today's game against the Spurs. So basically, that's an upgrade from where he was. I think it's a real questionable too. I don't think this is one where it's like, oh yeah, he's automatically going to play, or he's going to be out. You mentioned the shoulder thing, so like he's getting a little bit more mobility there. So we'll see. I'm sure they're going to do the whole put him through the workouts or whatever the case may be, and make a final call. But if he doesn't play in this game, I think there's a decent chance that, you could see him Wednesday. So it's a short-term thing. I don't see them like saying, let's just shut him down to the All-Star break or anything like that. I think he wants to play. Like, this is frustrating. You're the number 2 seed in the West right now. You got a chance to even get some more cushion because the Rockets, they're going to play the Knicks, tonight as well. And that's a game that's going to be tough for them to win. I mean, they very well could do it, but it's a chance for the Grizzlies to kind of even create a little bit of room between themselves and the Rockets. And you want to make sure that Ja Morant, if he is able to play, you want him out there on the floor to help you achieve that.
For sure. Ja Morant, questionable for tonight's game against the Spurs, but we got to talk about Jaren Jackson Jr., 37 points in that game over the Bucks, and he's actually going to be heading to San Francisco here in a little bit. Jaren Jackson Jr. named an All-Star for the second time. He leads the Memphis in points at 22 a game. That's a career high. Add that to his 6 boards, 1.6 blocks, and a career high 1.4 steals per game. Jaren took all that workload he took on last year and really brought it right into this season. The only player in the league with 53-pointers made, 50 steals, and 50 blocks. We call him the unicorn for a reason, and we got a chance to hear from him on what the big honor meant for the second time. Listen.
Oh, it's dope. It puts yourself in crazy company. Yeah, man. No words. A lot of people that came before me, kids coming up, they want this, they dream about this. Just be able to participate. I've been to All-Star Weekend when I was a kid, and now I get to go for my second time. A lot of people get to go one time, and not a lot of people get to go more than once, so that's huge, man. Credit to my teammates, credit to everybody.
Jaren, a second-time All-Star. I think we were kind of waited with bated breath last week to Michael, trying to see what would happen, because if he was going to get into the All-Star game, he was probably going to be one of the wild cards. I think we all agree he's been playing fantastic, might be in a conversation for some All-NBA honors this year. But from what you've seen this year, Jaren being named an All-Star, what have you liked about his game, and what's really evolved in his game this year that made him put him in that conversation?
Man, last season was a blessing in disguise for him. And, like a lot of people try to just dismiss last season. Like, oh, it didn't happen. Oh, it was ugly. Jaren was one of the players who greatly benefited from that, bro. Seeing all the double teams, seeing all the triple teams, all the isolation scoring that he had to take on. And you're seeing him now kind of attribute some of that and kind of, take it to another level on a team that's winning a bunch of basketball games. When they beat the Celtics, he closed that game out. He's closed several other games out. In this most recent game, he closed it out against the Bucks. 37 points, knocking down big shot after big shot. So I think it's just a constant evolution, but there's an art to watching Jaren play right now, especially on the offensive end. It's different spots on the floor. I've talked to him a lot about how he has spots. He has this, it's the ultimate scorer attitude. The best scorers in the NBA, they have certain spots on the NBA floor. If I get to that spot, I'm probably not missing. Jaren has spots. And, it looks somewhat unorthodox to some people when you see him kind of, throw a left-handed shot. It looks like he's off balance, off the glass, or, the right-handed hook shot when he turns, over his left shoulder or whatever the case may be. Like, these are things that he practices relentlessly. So, he's talked about having that three-point shot, mentioned him making 7 threes, against the Bucks. The Bucks are one of the top paint point prevention teams in the NBA. So that three-point shot was going to be big for him, because otherwise you're going to be driving into a paint consistently that includes Giannis Antetokounmpo and Brook Lopez, 2 very good rim protectors. So Jaren just has continued to evolve his game. He has counters for whatever teams are going to throw at him. When they double him, when they try to take away his right shoulder so he won't get to his left hand, he has a counter for each of those moves. He's doing it with hook shots. He's doing it with fadeaways. He's doing it just straight playing bully ball. And he's facing up some this year. So he's pretty much got a real big offensive package, and we know what he can do on a defensive end.
Yeah, when we spoke to him on Thursday, he did talk about all the things that happened last year, having to get so much of the offensive load, just allowing him to see so many things, right? Once teams kind of figured out, like, all right, well, there's no Dez in the game, there's no Ja Morant in the game. Like, all we got to do is really game plan for Jaren Jackson Jr., really, until G.G. Jackson kind of came along there in the second half. But he saw so much, and I think last night was kind of an epitome of what he's been able, or how he's kind of learned and processed some of those things. I think he was trying to get his points on the block. He did have a solid game on the block, especially with Giannis kind of covering him. But the Bucks kept sending Brook Lopez at him on a double team on the backside of the block. They know Jaren likes to turn towards the backboard, put it up with either hand, and they started sending Brook Lopez to that baseline. And Jaren was like, all right, kind of like a lethal shooter, right? I understand it now. So he backs it back out, and now we're seeing him fire from three-point range. I mean, 7 threes in a game for somebody his size is ridiculous. And I think when you watch his three-point shot, you're like, I mean, it don't look like it should go in. You know what I mean? Like it has rotation, but it's not Luke Kennard or Desmond Bane rotation, right? It's kind of a push shot. But he has become such a 3-level scorer, and I think that's what we talk about. The best scorers in the NBA. We talk about the KDs of the world, the Kawhis, guys who can be real 3-level scorers. And for him to be able to do that at his size, we talk about it all the time. You put a bigger post player on him, he's blowing by him. You put a smaller, lengthier wing guy on him, he's bullying him down low. He's super strong. Jaren certainly has earned the All-Star nod for this year, and it'll be fun to kind of see what he can do out there in San Francisco. But we got to talk about one of the biggest seismic shifts in the NBA that happened over the weekend. Like a thief in the night, the Dallas Mavericks coordinated a trade with the Lakers on Saturday, much to the surprise of pretty much everybody who watches basketball anywhere anytime. Luka Doncic headed to the Los Angeles Lakers along with Maxi Kleber and Markieff Morris. The Mavs get a future Hall of Famer, Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 Lakers first-round pick. Also included in this trade randomly, for whatever reason, the Jazz, who get Jalen Hood-Schifino and 2025 second-round picks via the Clippers and the Mavericks themselves. So, DeMichael, we kind of talked about this before the show, but where were you when you got the alert on your phone that Luka Doncic was headed to the LA Lakers?
Man, it's one of those moments you'll never forget. I mean, I was out with some friends, and we were all in the house, and there's a lot of people in there. There's a lot of people in the house, and then everyone's just suddenly looking at their phones, and everyone's looking down at their phones, and we start, looking up at each other. Everybody's like, "Do you see this?" And some people are like, "It's not real. It's not real." And I'm like, "Nah, this is real. There are multiple reporters, very credible reporters saying this, so it's 100% real. But it's just something you never see. Like, this isn't even something you say. It's a rarity. Like, Luka, 25-year-old in his prime, just took this team to the NBA Finals last season. Like, we're not talking about a team that went to the Finals 3-4 years ago and just struggling to get back. Like, they just went last season. And they've had success. Like, they've been the one team who, I think they beat Oklahoma City 3 times this season. So they've had success against them, and they should feel confident in what they have against anyone else when they're healthy. So just seeing them make that trade without seeing that process kind of play out was, it was wild. Especially, again, 25-year-old who 6 seasons, 5 first-team All-NBA appearances. Like, that's not something that's regular. We're not talking about – I mean, if you're 6 years and you make 5 All-NBA teams, third team, second team, all that included, he's got 5 first team. I mean, this is different. I've never seen anything like this with a player of that caliber being traded. Like, we're talking about it. This trade, like Anthony Davis, is just some regular guy, and Anthony Davis is a bona fide Hall of Famer, and that just goes to show like the magnitude of what happened.
Yeah, and I said it in the VO read there. Anthony Davis, 100% a Hall of Famer. It's interesting listening to Mavs brass kind of talk about the trade after the fact. They were putting up some kind of excuse about Luka's constant conditioning issues, which, yes, he has dealt with a calf injury kind of over and over again. But at the same time, I mean, you mentioned it. He dragged the Mavs to the NBA Finals last year, and certainly didn't go the way they wanted it to. I mean, you run into the buzzsaw that is the Boston Celtics, but the Mavs say they want to get better on defense. Defense wins championships is the quote that the Mavs GM used. And so you go and get an Anthony Davis, and while AD is no slouch, I mean, he is a 25-12 kind of guy. We've seen him put up 40 and 20 this year, still very much a productive player. Anthony Davis going to the Mavs, I don't think makes them a better team right now. Is Kyrie still the Kyrie that can put a team on his back? I think he's a really good player. I don't know if he's a Batman. I think we've tried that experiment a couple of times with him playing with the Celtics, with him playing with the Brooklyn Nets, and so now it's like, okay, is AD the Batman of this Mavs team? Are they going to be back in the playoff mix? I mean, the Mavs are 9th in the West right now, so to me, it's more likely they could fall out of playoff contention as they try to figure out the chemistry here between a Kyrie and an AD. And don't get me wrong, they're both all NBA level players or have been, and so I'm sure they can figure it out. But for Luka goes to LA. He's 25 years old. He's probably gonna have a chip on his shoulder right now. People are calling this Luka's villain origin story, right? And I think we get a little exasperated by the Laker talk as it is with LeBron being out there. But DeMichael, how do Luka and LeBron play together moving forward? I mean, I think LeBron's got to have some mixed feelings. I mean, he's not going to get everybody's best player, perimeter defender anymore, but at the same time, you don't have a big, and I'm sure the Lakers will still make some moves here moving forward.
I think both teams will kind of make some corresponding moves to kind of better round out their rosters, around these guys. Like, I don't think the Lakers ever thought coming into the season, like, there's a chance we could get Luka. So let's keep these guys here and keep this guy there, or whatever the case may be. So there are going to be some shifts that are made. But when you look at the Lakers, like you talked about it with Dallas, to me, Dallas, from this trade, they become much better. I mean, they already were a pretty good defense. They could be the best of the best. Now, if they could put out a front court of Gafford and Anthony Davis or Lively when he gets back healthy and Anthony Davis. But with the Lakers, there's some defensive issues there. Offensively, they're going to be pretty strong, depending on, what they do with Austin Reeves, LeBron James, Luka. Now, people like to say, there's only one basketball. That basketball is going to go in Luka Doncic's hands. Like, let's be clear, because LeBron James, one of the great things about LeBron is he's doesn't need the basketball in his hand as much as your typical point forward, point guard type of player. LeBron has been as effective or nearly as effective in the role of playing off the ball over the course of his career. So he'll adjust. It will be an adjustment. It's probably going to take some time, but at the same time, this is LeBron James we're talking about. It's not just some normal player. So I'm not too worried about the whole, there's only one ball type thing. Like, they'll figure that part out. Whereas the defense, it's a little more concerning. Anthony Davis covered up a lot of mistakes for the Lakers. And when he wasn't playing, they were a terrible defense. So that's going to be the question mark for them, is what can they do to kind of solidify this defense without Anthony Davis?
All right, and real quick, that massive trade kind of overshadowed the other big trade that did happen over the weekend. We had been talking nationally about De'Aaron Fox with the Sacramento Kings for the longest time, where he would end up, and he does get his preferred destination. He's been traded to the San Antonio Spurs, who the Grizzlies play tonight. Likely will not see De'Aaron Fox, but that trade also gets the Kings Zach LaVine and sends Zach Collins and Trey Jones to the Bulls. What do you think about the trade that the Spurs were able to make? What kind of opponent does it make the Spurs, and are they a better contender for the playoffs now that they've got a Wembanyama and a De'Aaron Fox in there?
Yeah, man, I know a lot of teams are jealous at the way that the Spurs to just get a guy.
They get whatever they want, man.
I mean, because if you would have asked, you would have said, hey, Spurs, you're going to get De'Aaron Fox. Anyone logically would have said, okay, you're going to have to give up either Devin Vassell, Jeremy Shohan, Keldon Johnson, maybe even Stephon Castle, if the right opportunity makes sense. They didn't have to give up any of those guys. So you pretty much kept the young core intact. Still got Chris Paul, which they got to figure out, what that dynamic is going to be like. Maybe Chris Paul goes to a reserve role with De'Aaron Fox running the show, but Chris Paul has been pretty solid for the Spurs. So some things to figure out. But, yeah, I'm with you. That dynamic between having a guy like De'Aaron Fox, who is one of the better, pick and roll players in the NBA, and Wembanyama is one of the better rollers in the NBA on paper, and the stats say this is a match that's perfectly made. So the scoring ability of De'Aaron Fox will be very, very important into elevating this team. I think it was a solid move. I think it's an A+ move for the Spurs because you didn't give up Devin Vassell. You didn't give up Keldon Johnson. So now you're talking about not only do you have Fox and Wemby here, you got some decent pieces around him. Harrison Barnes as well you could throw in there. So I like this for the Spurs. The Kings, shout out to them for getting something, right? Like, you got Zach LaVine, who's a borderline all-star player. You were able, I get it. They want to keep winning. They didn't want to depart from De'Aaron Fox. And you got other players, DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis, Malik Monk. Those are guys that want to win. So going out to get Zach LaVine, you at least could keep that window open a little bit.
Yeah, certainly going to be interesting to see how the Kings kind of play moving forward. You get a Zach LaVine in there with a DeRozan. I kind of wonder who's getting the ball more in that situation. They probably kind of got to figure out their point guard scenario here a little bit more. But they do get some assets. They get LaVine. They get Sissoko. They get a first-round pick in 2025 from Chicago, a 2027 unprotected first-rounder from San Antonio, and an unprotected first-round pick in 2031 from Minnesota. So definitely got a little haul there for sure. Maybe makes the sting of losing De'Aaron Fox a little bit less. DeMichael, my guy, I appreciate you, man. This has been a fantastic conversation. Follow DeMichael on all the platforms. Read his work at The Commercial Appeal, and certainly go watch Locked On Grizzlies on YouTube and pretty much everywhere you find your podcast. DeMichael, my guy, appreciate you, and I'll see you tonight at the Spurs game.
All right, take care, man. I'll talk to you later.
So, all right, coming up, we get into some college hoops. The Memphis Tigers win another big one on the road, this time in Houston, and a close but no cigar kind of loss for the Ole Miss Rebels against Auburn, the number one team in the land. We'll get into it. That's coming up next.
But some days are more impactful than others. In Memphis, we get it all. From heat waves, severe storms, snow, and ice. As a meteorologist, it's my job to keep you safe on those impactful days. Don't get caught off guard and know what to expect with ABC 24 Weather Impact Days.
The 24 Plus app. Watch us live and continue with us on 24 Plus. And get extended coverage of weather and breaking news. The 24 Plus app. ABC 24 is making your voice heard.
This city is filthy, it's crime infested, and somebody need to do something about it.
Listening to your concerns.
We could have such a great city if we really just put the time and energy into it and come up with solutions.
And getting results for you.
We appreciate 24 for coming out.
Getting the issues taken care of.
When you put it on ABC 24, somebody gonna listen.
ABC 24, seeking solutions for you.
I just love working on this morning show.
We really are like one big family. Myself, Yvonne, Ruben.
Probably gonna like what you see and what you hear. And you're gonna leave being informed and having a little bit of fun at the same time.
ABC 24 News this morning.
The news never stops, so we're taking you beyond the broadcast with ABC 24 Plus.
Continuing coverage of the issues that matter to you.
We need to get something done.
More interviews and stories that dig deeper. The Lord has a plan, is all I know.
We'll take you beyond the scores and highlights for local sports coverage you can't find anywhere else.
Plus, on-demand forecasts to keep you weather aware.
ABC 24 News right now on ABC 24 Plus.
Welcome back. The now number 17 Memphis Tigers, formerly number 19, keep rolling, edging out Rice 86-83 to extend their winning streak to 5 games and claim the top spot in the American Athletic Conference. P.J. Haggerty led the way with 26 points, while P.J. Carter, the other P.J., added 19. Rice, now on a 7-game losing skid, kept it close with 19 points each from Trey Broadnax and Jacob Darr. Memphis shot an impressive 55% from the field and over 52% from deep, but struggled at the free throw line. The Tigers nearly let a late 11-point lead slip, but clutch plays from Carter sealed the deal. Memphis has won 5 in a row now and improved to 8-1 in AAC play and avoid a costly Quadrant 3 loss.
It's what you got to have to be a great team. Like we're showing all year long. We got one loss in the non-conference on the road in Hawaii. We got a loss on the road at Philly, and then we haven't lost on the road anywhere else. To go into other people's buildings and continue to win ugly, it's a win. And I'm proud of the team.
Yeah, certainly kind of been the case for the Memphis Tigers these last couple of games. They continue to win ugly. And at the end of the day, a win is going to be a win for these Memphis Tigers. I think we talk about early on in the year, as soon as they got into AAC play, every game is going to be what we call a minefield, right? They're constantly trying to dodge mines left and right. These teams are going to give the Memphis Tigers their best shot pretty much every time they come because they're going to be the T-shirt game. They're going to be that number 1 team in the league that everybody wants to beat, and everybody's trying to, you want to be the best, you got to beat the best, and right now the Tigers sit as kings of the AAC. A couple of things that stand out in this one. P.J. Haggerty continues to be incredibly impressive. 26 points, 8 rebounds, one of the best scorers in the in the country, in the NCAA, still up there in the top 5. But what's really been impressive to me over these last couple of games has been the play of P.J. Carter. I think it's been 14, 14, and 19 now over the last 3 for P.J. Carter. He continues to impress. Listening to the post-game presser, and shout out to the beat reporters out there keeping up with the Tigers, somebody asked him about the play of P.J. Carter, not P.J. Haggerty, P.J. Carter, and they talked about how early on when he first kind of got with the Tigers, Penny Hardaway had to pull P.J. to the side and say, hey, kind of feels like you're enjoying the moment but not taking this as seriously as you want. And P.J. Carter actually said, hey, coach, I apologize. I'm not taking any of this for granted. I love being here and being a part of the Tigers, and you're not going to see any of this slouching or slacking or whatever it is that Coach Hardaway was seeing. And I think over these last 3 games, we've really seen P.J. Carter come alive. I think if he becomes a real reliable scoring option off of the bench, where he kind of already was, but if he could hover around anywhere in that 10 to 14 point range off the bench every single game, I think that's going to be quite the relief for Penny Hardaway as they continue to move forward. Memphis, 38 points in the paint. They outscore Rice in the paint 38-28. That continues to be a strong point of emphasis for the Tigers this year. Not as big a game from Dane Danger on this one. I think we've seen him kind of come up big the last several games. A little more quieter, dealt with some foul trouble in this one. But what was disappointing in this win, and that's why we're calling this one kind of an ugly win, is that Memphis was up double digits in the second half, kind of getting into the closing moments, and you're thinking they're going to cruise to victory here. I think I kind of laid back. I was folding some laundry. I'm kind of checking my phone right as this game is starting to close, and you keep looking up, and you're like, oh, Rice is close. Like, it's a 7-point game. Like, oh, it's a 5-point game. And what Rice did, first of all, they put the pressure on the Tigers. Again, turnovers continue to be an issue. 16 Memphis turnovers, 23 points off for Rice, 23 points for Rice off of those 16 turnovers for the Tigers. And what we're seeing is they actually put the pressure on Memphis down the stretch. Memphis started to miss free throws, 9 of 15 from the line, and kind of getting close. You're expecting P.J. Carter, P.J. Haggerty, Tyrese Hunter to really handle that. You're not really worried about them shooting free throws. But this is why teams pressure at the end of games, and you don't really kind of let go of the rope, because Memphis missed the front end of 2 1-and-1 opportunities. It allowed Rice to cut the lead to 1 point several times. And so ultimately, you extend your win streak, you still are able to hold them off, and they got some pretty clutch baskets there from both PJs down the stretch. But it's going to be kind of interesting. I think Memphis still continues to kind of play mind games, kind of play with their food here with some of these teams in the AAC down the stretch. Listen, every game is not going to be a blowout. It's just not going to work out that way. But when the Tigers have double-digit leads in the second half, under 5-6 minutes to play, they can't allow these leads to shrink. They've got to extend them. And I think what we've seen is they're trying to – there's a pretty good chance, as long as they take care of business, that they're going to be in the NCAA tournament, right? But what they're trying to do is get off of that 6, 7, 8 seed that we've seen them be in the NCAA tournament the last couple of times. Right now, I think some of the latest projections I've seen, I think Joe Lenardi, the last time I saw his bracket, he had them as high as a 4 seed. And I think they'll probably stay there as long as they take care of business. But they've also, I'm not saying you got to blow teams out, but when you got to beat some of these teams, but somewhere in that 8 to 15 range, especially when you've already got a double-digit lead. So the Tigers will play again on Wednesday. I believe they have Tulsa, and so we'll see what Penny Hardaway will be able to do. That game will actually be back at home in FedEx Forum on Wednesday. Apologies to my production staff. Probably should have given a bigger head up on that one. I was in the building for Ole Miss's matchup with the number 1 team in the land, Bruce Pearl and Auburn. The Tigers came in 7-0 in conference play. Ole Miss looking for their first ever win over an AP number 1, and they came out looking pretty good. There, Malik Dia on the slam on the fast break, get it out the net pretty quick. Whoa there, big fella. Rebs down 7. Auburn on fire in this one, particularly from 3. Denver Jones on the kick out, 16 points for him. Auburn made 14 threes in this game. 2 of them came from Janai Broome, the potential player of the year. Just before the half, a little step back, and that puts Auburn up 7, 41-34 going into the second half. But Sean Padula put all of Oxford on his back for this one. Can I have this dance? A little splash in your eye for 3. Padula's best game of the season, 29 points. And then he's going to give a little helper to my man Matthew Morrell here, another ankle breaker. Morrell had 17 points. Ole Miss got as close as 1 point in this one, but Auburn closed pretty strong. 5 players in double figures. Janai Broome had 20 and 12. Tigers survived 92-82, but Chris Beard says this validates that his team is for real.
I thought we played hard enough to win today. And I'm not so sure, just my opinion, I'm not so sure this is one of the better games Auburn's played. They get what seemed like 5 or 6 guys in double figures. They had the special performances. We had Sean and Matt. I think Brakefield minus the turnovers was right there in an A-type game. They had 3 or 4 guys show up and play, in my opinion, their A games.
So certainly a difficult one to swallow if you're the Ole Miss Rebels, because you're right there in this game. And I think that's the biggest thing that's going to stick out for Chris Beard. I'm actually trying to pull something up real quick. The 3-point shooting for the Auburn Tigers was incredible in this one. And I think in a lot of games, the Ole Miss Rebels probably would have won against a lot of teams in the SEC with the way they played. But their inability to stop Auburn from shooting from the 3-point line was really the Achilles heel in this one. 14 of 28 from 3. I think if you pull up the box score in this one, it was 3 or 4 players who had 4 or more in this game. That's really going to be difficult for any team to win. You just can't, especially when the other team has the presumptive potential college basketball player of the year in Johni Broome. This game was really good. 20 points, 12 rebounds for Johni Broome in this one, but he also had just the cast of characters really came to play. 5 players in double figures. Chad Baker-Mazara, 4 of 6 from 3. Denver Jones, 4 of 7 from 3. They had 18 and 16 respectively. 15 points from Miles Kelly. And then they also got it done in the paint. Ole Miss was out-rebounded by 10-plus again, which has continued to be kind of a theme for this team. I think at this point in the year, you just know they're not going to be a great rebounding team, kind of trying to keep it close in a lot of aspects. But Dylan Cardwell, on top of Johni Broome, who had a double-double, Dylan Cardwell had 10 points and 12 rebounds himself in this game. So it's not gonna get it done in a lot of games. But for the positive for the Rebels, I think you got an absolutely dynamite game from Sean Padula in this one. 29 points, a season high for him. He was doing it every which way he wanted to. Shot well from the 3-point line, 3 of 6. Actually shot 10 of 16 for the game. 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals. He was doing it on both ends. The Rebels got a really strong contribution from Jamin Brakefield, who had 12 points. I think most of that was in the first half. Did have 4 turnovers, and Coach Beard kind of pointed that out in the post-game presser. Just kind of didn't get enough from him there in the second half. But what I thought was really encouraging for this one was you got probably the best game in the SEC that you've gotten from Matthew Morrell. 17 points. He's only had a double digits in 2 straight games in conference once this season. That was January 14th at Alabama, where they won, and Alabama was a top 5 team in the country, and they still are, and then January 18th at Mississippi State. So I think if they can continue to get better production from Matthew Morrell, kind of hearing from the coaching staff, it seems like he's doing a lot just to get his body prepared each and every night. He's really been struggling with some injuries, kind of some nagging stuff. If you can get more production from him moving forward, I think is really going to bode well for Ole Miss down the stretch. Yeah, you lost this game. Yeah, you're in you've lost 3 of the last 4, but against some really good competition. This game, I agree with what Coach Beard said, and Sean Padula also said it in the postgame, like, this kind of validated that, we can hang with some of the best in the country. Auburn is a really good team. Bruce Pearl said it was the best road game they've played all year. And when you get the best game from the best team in the country, even in your own building, sometimes you just got to chalk it up to the L and tip your hat to an Auburn team that's going to be really, really good. Ole Miss will come back on Tuesday. They don't get any time to relax. They play Kentucky, who is a top 15 team themselves. You once again get Kentucky at home, so another opportunity for Ole Miss to kind of bounce back against another really good team in the SEC. It continues to be a gauntlet, but they continue to play well and I think really prove to themselves and everybody else that they're not going to be a slouch here in the SEC, and they probably should be an NCAA tournament team here moving forward. So that game will be Tuesday in Oxford, and the SJB Pavilion was really, really jumping against Auburn, so I'm sure it'll be much the same way. We're going to wrap up the show with the best thing that I saw over the weekend. Best thing I saw, Seth Hennigan, reporting it back to football. Still making plays, the Memphis Tigers quarterback at the Reese's Senior Bowl threw the game-winning touchdown in the final seconds to Jack Besh because, of course, he did. He's Seth Hennigan, and it's something we've seen from him over and over again. Hennigan went 12 for 14 for 132 yards and that touchdown. He was named the Senior Bowl American Team MVP. So shout out to Seth Hennigan, a great way to end his college career. We'll see what he can do if he gets drafted here coming up soon. That's all I got for you here on the 24th floor. I really appreciate you guys tapping in. I'm going to be rolling solo, but we're bringing in guests. I'm back on Thursday we're talking about Girls and Women in Sports Day. Tigers women's player Alacia Smith will join the show, and that's not a conversation that you're going to want to miss. Until then, thanks to my production crew. Thanks to producer Richard Denson for guiding me throughout this show. I'm Avery Braxton, and I'm out.